This is eternal human spirit, where every story proves why humanity never breaks.
The Queen's gaze. The throne hall of the alien palace was vast, larger than any human building the soldier had ever seen. Tall black pillars rose into the high ceiling, carved with glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. Blue fire burned. In hanging lanterns, filling the chamber with shadows that seemed alive. Hundreds of alien nobles stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the strange scene unfolding before them. In the center of the hall, a young human soldier stood trembling, his worn uniform covered with dust and scars of battle. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his bare hands and courage. Beside him, holding tightly to his hand, was the alien princess, her eyes shining with defiance. Her long, silver hair flowed over her shoulders, her slender frame glowing with an otherworldly aura. She pressed herself close to the human as if he were her only shield in the world. The nobles gasped in shock, their whispers echoing against the black stone walls. "Impossible," one alien muttered, his voice filled with disgust. "How dare the princess of the empire touch a weak human?" Another spat. "Has she lost her mind, or has the human used some trick?" The whispers grew louder, like waves crashing against rocks. The human felt his heart pound in his chest, but he did not let go of her hand. He could feel the fear around him, but also the trust in her grip. It was the only thing keeping him standing. Then silence fell. The sound of armored footsteps echoed through the hall. From behind the great throne, the alien queen appeared. Her towering figure shone under the blue flames, her robes heavy with jewels, her crown forged from black crystal. Her eyes glowed like molten gold, sharp enough to cut through the air. The crowd bowed instantly, but the queen's eyes were not on her court. Her gaze was fixed only on the human and her daughter. She stepped forward, her presence filling the hall with crushing weight. Her lips pressed into a thin line as the princess clung tighter to the human's hand. The queen stopped in front of them, her shadow stretching over the human like a storm cloud. Her voice rang like thunder across the chamber. "Why does my daughter trust you, human?" The human's breath caught in his throat. The hall was silent, waiting for his answer. He could feel the eyes of every alien noble burning into him, filled with hatred and disbelief. He wanted to speak, but his voice was lost in the storm of fear. The princess lifted her chin, her voice trembling but strong. "Mother, he saved me," she said, "when no one else would." The nobles hissed in anger, some even laughed cruelly. "A human saving our princess." One sneered, "What lies?" But the queen raised her hand and silence returned instantly. Her golden eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. Her voice dropped lower, sharper. "Speak, human. Tell me why my daughter clings to your hand. Tell me why she looks at you with trust." The human swallowed hard, his mind racing. He thought of that night on the battlefield. The fire, the screams, the moment he saw the princess trapped under, the ruins. He remembered how he could have run, how he could have saved himself, but instead he had lifted the heavy stone, carried her on his back, and fought through the chaos to bring her to safety. He remembered the look in her eyes when she realized he would rather die than leave her behind, but he could not tell this yet. Not here, not before a queen who glared at him like a predator. So he stood in silence, his hand tightening on the princess's. The hall grew colder, the queen's anger filling the air like a storm. "Do you dare defy me with silence?" The queen hissed, her voice sharp as a blade. The nobles shouted in agreement, their voices rising. "Punish him," they cried. "No human should touch our princess." "Cast him into the pit," another roared. The human stood his ground, his face pale, but his eyes steady. He did not kneel. He did not release her hand. The princess stepped forward, holding on to him tighter. "Mother, if you punish him, you punish me too," she said, her voice breaking yet strong. The hall froze. Stunned by her words, the queen's eyes widened. just for a moment, then narrowed again. Her fury burned hotter, but beneath it there was something else, something no one in the court could see. It was not just rage, it was doubt. Why would her daughter defy her for a mere human? The queen leaned closer, her face inches from the human's, her golden eyes glowing with fire. The silence was suffocating, broken only by her words. "Why does my daughter trust you, human?" she demanded again. Her voice was no longer thunder, but a whisper sharper than any blade. The human's lips parted, but before he could answer, the queen straightened. Her robes swirled as she turned away, her voice echoing through the chamber. "If he is truly worthy of her trust, then let him prove it," she declared. The nobles roared in approval, their voices filling the hall with savage delight. The princess gasped, fear flashing across her face. The human's heart sank, knowing his trial had only just begun. But in that moment, one truth remained unbroken. The princess still held his hand, refusing to let go, and no glare, not even the queen's, could break that bond. A court of distrust. The silence that followed the queen's command did not last long, for the alien nobles erupted like a storm, breaking through the fragile calm of the throne hall. Their voices rose in waves, filled with venom and disbelief, echoing against the towering walls of black stone. The air that moments ago had been suffocating with silence was now choked with scorn, and every word spoken struck against the human like daggers meant to break his spirit. Nobles of every rank, draped in shimmering robes or clad in war armor, leaned forward from the edges of the hall with twisted sneers upon their alien faces. Their eyes glowed with hatred, their voices heavy with mockery, and their words cut deeper than any weapon. "Lies," one of the elder lords barked, his voice rumbling with contempt. "The daughter of our queen would never place her hand in that of a fragile creature. This is trickery, a deception born of weakness. The human seeks favor where he does not belong." His words were followed by a chorus of agreement, for the nobles nodded and hissed, eager to see the human brought low before their eyes. Another noble woman, tall and sharp-eyed, spoke with cruelty dripping from every syllable. "Perhaps the human has poisoned the princess's mind. Perhaps his words are a spell, a toxin hidden in his tongue. How else would she, our shining heir, cling to him like a lost child?" Her voice rose higher, trembling with disgust. "He is dirt, unworthy of her gaze. Let us strip this illusion away and cast him into the pits." The human stood in the center of this storm, his chest rising and falling, but his eyes did not falter. The mocking laughter of the nobles washed over him like icy water. But still, he stood, his hand remained locked with the princess's, and though his body shook with the weight of their hatred, he did not release her grip. He had felt fear before, on battlefields drenched in fire and blood, but never had it pressed upon him so heavily as in this hall of alien royalty. The princess raised her chin, her voice rising above the crowd, though it quivered with emotion. "You are wrong," she cried, her words echoing against the vast ceiling. "This human did not trick me. He did not deceive me. He saved me when no one else would. When I was lost, he carried me. When I was weak, he stood by me. I trust him because he gave me his life without asking for mine." Her words struck the hall like lightning, and for a heartbeat, silence fell once more. But the nobles were not so easily silenced. They roared louder, more furious than before, spitting insults at both the human and the princess. "Naive child," shouted one. "You disgrace the throne," hissed another. "Have you forgotten your blood? Have you forgotten who you are?" Their voices blended into a single storm of scorn, as if the entire court stood united against one fragile girl and the man at her side. Yet even as their fury swelled, the queen lifted her hand, and once more the voices died at her command. Her golden eyes narrowed, shining like burning suns. As she stared at her daughter, the weight of her gaze fell then upon the human, crushing and sharp as if she could peel the truth from his very soul. Her lips parted, her words slow and measured, carrying the weight of both fury and curiosity. "You speak of trust, my daughter, but trust is not given without reason. Tell me, what reason has this human given you? What binds you to him when all the stars in the galaxy warn you to turn away?" The princess trembled but did not release the human's hand. Her voice was soft, yet clear enough to carry across the hall. "Because he is not like the others. He is not like us, nor like the warriors who abandoned me. He did not look at me as a princess. He looked at me as someone he would not leave behind, even if it cost him his life." Her words hung in the air like a fragile flame, flickering but refusing to die. The queen's gaze hardened, her eyes flashing with fire. "Then let him prove it," she said coldly, her voice a blade cutting through the tension. She turned toward her nobles, who leaned forward eagerly, their eyes gleaming with cruel delight. "This human will face the test of the court. If he is what my daughter claims, he will endure. If he is what you all suspect, he will fall, and we will see the truth with our own eyes." A murmur of excitement rippled through the hall, the nobles grinning at the thought of the human's humiliation. They could already see him broken, crawling, crushed beneath the weight of the trial that no outsider had ever survived. For them, it was not a question of victory, but only how long he would last before death claimed him. The human's stomach twisted with dread, but he did not bow his head. He felt the princess's grip tighten on his hand, her fingers trembling but refusing to let go. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her voice, when she spoke, was filled with steel. "Mother, please," she begged, "do not cast him into your cruel games. He has proven himself already. Do not make him bleed for your pride." But the queen did not soften. She turned, her head slightly, her crown catching the blue firelight, and when she spoke again her words echoed with finality. "If he truly holds your trust, then let him show the court why." The chamber shook with the roar of approval from the nobles. The human's fate was sealed, the trial awaited, and with it, the judgment of an empire. Yet, even as the hall erupted, the princess pressed herself closer to him, whispering words only he could hear. "No matter what they do, I will not leave your side." And though fear gnawed at the edges of his heart, the human felt a strange calm. For in that moment, in the face of hatred and doubt, the bond between him and the princess stood unbroken, and even the gaze of the alien queen could not shatter it. The memory revealed. The throne hall still trembled with the echo of the queen's decree, her words hanging heavy in the air like chains around the human's neck. The nobles whispered to one another with cruel smiles, already imagining the humiliating end of the fragile creature before them. Yet, as the crowd celebrated the judgment, the princess tightened her grip upon the human's hand, and her voice rose once again, not with fear, but with the strength of memory. She turned her face upward, toward her mother and the court, her silver hair falling across her shoulders as she spoke with trembling fire. "You want to know why I trust him? Then hear me now, for none of you were there that night. None of you saw what I saw." Her words pulled the hall into silence, the murmurs dying away as the crowd leaned forward, curiosity wrestling with contempt. Even the queen's golden eyes narrowed with reluctant interest, and for the first time she did not speak but waited, her gaze sharp and unyielding. The princess inhaled slowly, her voice shaking at first but growing steadier as the memory came alive within her. "The night our forces retreated from the battlefield of Zharan, I was left behind. The fire of war still burned across the ruins. I had fallen from my escort, crushed beneath the stones of a broken wall. Smoke choked the air and screams filled. 'The night,' I called out, but no soldier came. No knight of our people came. I thought I would die alone beneath the ash." The crowd stirred uneasily, for the memory of that battlefield was not unknown to them. It had been a shameful night in the Empire's history. yet no noble had ever dared speak of it in such open words. The princess's eyes glistened as she pressed closer to the human's side. And then he came, she whispered, her hand trembling against his. Not one of my guards, not one of my own kind, but a human soldier lost in the same chaos. He should have run. He should have left me, for the battle was not his to fight. My life was not his to save. Yet he did not turn away. He saw me trapped, bleeding, and helpless, and instead of abandoning me, he came closer. He lifted the stone with his bare hands until his arms bled. He pulled me free from death. Gasps spread through the hall, the nobles shaking their heads in denial. Some snarled and muttered lies under their breath, but the princess's words carried weight. Her voice cutting through the storm like a blade, she did not stop. He carried me when my legs failed. Through fire and collapsing ruins, I felt the heat sear his skin. I saw the blood run from his back where debris cut him, and still he moved forward. He did not ask who I was. He did not ask what he would gain. He only shielded me, as though my life mattered more than his own. The queen's face was unreadable, yet her fingers tightened upon the armrest of her throne, her golden eyes fixed on the human with a sharpness that sought to pierce his very soul. The hall, once filled with laughter and scorn, grew heavier with silence as the princess continued, her voice breaking but steady. When the fire closed in, when there was no path forward, he placed me beneath his body, shielding me with his own flesh. I heard his heart racing. I felt his breath weaken. I thought he would die to protect me. And in that moment, I understood something I had never seen, even among my own kind. A bond beyond blood, beyond duty, beyond empire. I understood trust. The words struck the hall like thunder, and even those nobles who had mocked the human now shifted uncomfortably in their places, for the image the princess painted was not one of trickery but of sacrifice. A human who had nothing to gain, yet gave everything he had. Her fingers gripped his hand tighter, her voice rising with raw emotion. That is why I trust him. That is why I will not release his hand even if you, mother, command me to. Because in the ashes of that night he proved himself not by words but by action, and action cannot be erased by scorn. The human's chest tightened as he listened, the memory flashing once more in his own mind, the heat of the fire, the weight of the stone, the pain in his body as he shielded her. He had never thought of it as noble or heroic. It had been instinct, an unwillingness to leave another soul behind in the dark, yet hearing her speak it aloud filled him with a strange strength he had not felt since he stepped into the hall. The queen rose slowly from her throne, her towering form casting a shadow over the chamber. The firelight glimmered against her crown as her robes swept across the floor. Her gaze moved from her daughter to the human, her expression sharp and cold. Yet there was something else buried deep within her eyes, something no one could name. Her voice rang out, deep and unwavering. Stories are easy, memories are but words. Words can be twisted, words can be lies. In this court, truth is proven by strength, not speech. She raised her hand, her voice like iron. If he did what you say, then let him show the court. Now, let him endure as he endured for you. Let him survive the trial of the beasts, and only then will your trust mean anything. The chamber erupted once more, the nobles roaring with savage delight, their eyes shining with cruel hunger for blood. Yet beneath the thunder of their voices, the princess's words lingered, carved into the air like fire across the night sky. And though the trial loomed ahead like a storm, the bond between human and princess stood unshaken, a flame that no shadow of distrust could snuff out. The queen's trial. The hall grew darker as the alien queen's command echoed across the chamber. The blue flames in the crystal lanterns seemed to flicker more fiercely, as if the very palace walls hungered for the test that was about to begin. The nobles' whispers returned, but this time they carried an edge of eager cruelty, no longer mocking in doubt but sharpened in anticipation of blood. The words trial and death slipped from their lips like poison, their eyes gleaming with savage joy as they imagined the fragile human crushed beneath the might of the queen's chosen test. The princess stepped forward, her hand still bound to the human's, her silver eyes glowing with both fear and defiance as she pleaded, "Mother, he has already proven himself. Do not force this cruelty upon him. You saw my truth, you heard my words. What more must he give to satisfy your doubt?" Her voice quivered with desperation, yet she spoke without breaking, her body trembling with the force of her heart. But the queen remained unmoved, her golden gaze fixed upon her daughter with the weight of centuries of rule. "Words alone are not enough," the queen declared, her voice cold and commanding as steel. "The trust you claim must be tested before the eyes of the empire. If it is real, it will endure. If it is false, it will break, and we will bury this shame here and now." She turned her piercing gaze upon the human, her eyes glowing brighter. "Human, you will face the trial of beasts. You will fight not as a soldier of your kind, but as a measure of worth in this hall. Succeed, and perhaps your life will mean more than dust. Fail, and your death will prove that my daughter's trust was misplaced." The court erupted in thunderous approval. The nobles slammed their hands against the cold stone benches, their cheers filling the chamber like the roar of a storm. The sound was deafening, a celebration not of honor but of the violence they were certain they would soon witness. Their voices merged into a chant that rattled the pillars of the hall. Trial, trial, trial. They wanted blood, they wanted spectacle. They wanted the fragile human broken before their eyes. The princess clutched the human's hand with desperation, her eyes wide with terror. "No, please," she begged again, turning back toward her mother. "You cannot do this. He saved me once already. Must he bleed again, only to satisfy your pride? Must you test what has already been proven?" Tears glimmered in her eyes, her voice heavy with grief. Yet the queen did not waver, her expression unflinching, her crown shimmering beneath the firelight. "You are a princess of the empire," the queen answered firmly. "You will not speak as though your heart rules this throne. It is not love, nor gratitude, nor pity that proves a man's worth. It is endurance, it is strength. And until this human shows, both before all of us, your claim remains nothing but fragile words." Her voice dropped lower, a dangerous whisper. "Do not mistake kindness for proof, child. And do not mistake survival of one night for a bond that can withstand a lifetime." The human stood silent, his jaw tight, his heart pounding like a war drum within his chest. The storm of voices, the weight of the queen's decree, the fear in the princess's voice, it pressed upon him from all sides, yet he did not falter. He tightened his grip upon her trembling hand, his eyes lifting to meet the queen's unyielding glare. He spoke at last, his words quiet, yet steady. "If this is the trial you demand, then I will face it." The hall fell into stunned silence. The nobles momentarily silenced by the human's calm defiance, their mocking grins faltered as they realized he did not beg for mercy. He did not cower. He stood ready to meet their savage entertainment without complaint. The princess gasped, her body twisting toward him, her voice breaking as she whispered, "You cannot. They mean to kill you." But he only turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers with quiet resolve, and he whispered back, "You trusted me once. Let me show them why." The queen's lips curved into something between a smile and a snarl, a cruel satisfaction. In seeing him accept, she raised her hand and signaled to the guards at the edges of the throne hall. Massive alien warriors stepped forward, their armor glinting in the firelight, their long weapons tapping against the stone as they marched in rhythm. At her command, they would lead the human into the depths of the arena beneath the palace, a place where countless creatures of nightmare had been bred for the sole purpose of testing strength and breaking spirits. The nobles leaned forward eagerly as the guards approached, their eyes filled with hunger. They whispered among themselves, trading bets and predictions, some sneering that the human would not last a minute, others laughing that his screams would echo for hours. Their words filled the chamber with cruelty, and though they spoke as though the outcome were already decided, none dared to ignore the faint ripple of tension beneath their scorn, for the human had not flinched, and that alone unsettled them more than they admitted. The princess stood frozen, her eyes locked on the humans, her lips trembling as if to speak again. But she knew it would change nothing. Her mother had spoken, the court demanded spectacle, and the human had accepted. All she could do now was watch and pray that the bond she had declared before the throne would survive the trial. And so the command was given. The guards surrounded the human and began to lead him toward the great doors at the far end of the chamber, the enormous gates carved with the shapes of beasts long forgotten by history. The air grew colder, the firelight dimmed, and the chanting of the nobles thundered once more in his ears. The princess cried out his name one last time as the gates opened with a deep rumble, and the human, unarmed and unarmored, stepped forward into the darkness where the queen's trial awaited. Against the beasts. The great iron gates of the arena creaked open with a sound that shook the very foundations of the palace, their heavy chains rattling like thunder rolling across the night sky. The human stepped forward into the darkness beyond, his feet pressing against sand that was stained with the history of countless battles. The air smelled of iron, dust, and something far older, something primal that carried with it the stench of death. Above him the ceiling opened to a dome of black stone and burning torches, casting shadows that writhed and twisted as though the arena itself were alive. From the stands high above, the nobles gathered like vultures, their faces glowing in the dim firelight as they leaned over the edges to watch. Their voices rose in cruel excitement, chanting and laughing, eager for the sight of human blood spilled upon their sacred sand. The queen sat upon a separate high throne that overlooked the arena, her golden eyes unblinking as she fixed her gaze upon the human, while beside her the princess leaned forward desperately, her hands clutching the railing, her heart pounding with fear and helplessness. The human's breath came slow and steady as he looked around. He had no weapon, no shield, not even armor to cover his wounds from past battles. All he had were his hands, his instincts, and the promise he carried within his chest, the promise to protect the one who trusted him. His eyes scanned the arena floor, noting the cracks in the stone walls, the distant shadows moving just beyond. The torchlight. He knew he was not alone. He knew something was waiting for him, watching him, and he tightened his fists though he felt the tremor in his arms. A deep rumble vibrated beneath his feet, the ground shifting as if the earth itself breathed. Then from the farthest shadow came a growl so deep it shook the arena walls. The first beast stepped into the firelight, a monstrous creature taller than any human, its body covered in armored scales that glistened under the torchlight. Its eyes glowed with savage hunger, and its claws scraped the stone floor with a screech that pierced the ears of every spectator. The nobles roared in approval, some even standing to cheer, their voices drowning the silence. The human stood still, his body tense, but his mind sharp. He did not charge recklessly as the creature stalked toward him. Instead, he watched its movements, the way its tail lashed behind it, the way its nostrils flared as it scented him. He remembered the lessons of survival learned not in schools, but in the chaos of war. He remembered how to endure when the world around him wanted him broken. And with those memories he calmed his fear and waited. The beast lunged, its massive claws tearing into the sand as it charged with terrifying speed. The ground shook with each step as it hurled its body toward him. The nobles cried out in excitement. The princess screamed his name, yet the human did not run. At the last moment he dropped low, rolling across the sand as the beast's claws slashed through the air where he had stood. Dust exploded around him as he came to his feet, his lungs burning but his mind alive. He had survived the first strike. The nobles jeered, calling his evasion nothing but luck. But the queen's eyes narrowed as she studied him, for she could see something that others could not. She saw the way his movements carried thought, not panic, the way he turned his body not only to avoid, but to learn. He was watching the beast, studying it. Each breath he took was one more moment of survival, one more truth to defy her court. The beast turned, its jaws opening wide to reveal rows of jagged teeth that gleamed in the torchlight. Its roar shook the arena as it lunged again, this time striking with its tail that lashed across the sand like a whip of iron. The human dove to the side, the strike missing his head by only inches. The tail smashed into the stone wall behind him with such force that cracks spread across its surface, dust falling from the ceiling. The human's body ached as he scrambled to his feet, but his eyes lit with a glimmer of hope, for in that strike he saw what the nobles could not. The beast's own strength could be turned against it. He positioned himself carefully, forcing the creature to strike again and again, each time dodging with the barest margin, each time letting it slam its claws or tail into the stone, weakening itself with its own fury. The nobles screamed at him with hatred, accusing him of cowardice. But still he endured, minute by minute, until sweat dripped from his brow and blood ran down his arms where claws had grazed him. Yet still he stood, his chest heaving, his spirit unbroken. The princess gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white, her eyes wide with both fear and admiration. Every time he rose again, every time he dodged another strike, her heart surged with the proof of her own words. She turned toward her mother, her voice breaking. "You see, he does not run, he does not break. He endures because he is more than what you believe him to be." But the queen remained silent, her expression unreadable, though her eyes glowed brighter with every strike the human survived. At last, the beast roared once more and charged with all its might, its body thundering across the sand like a storm unleashed. The human waited until the final moment, his body twisting aside as the monster crashed headlong into the cracked stone wall. The arena shook as the impact thundered across the chamber. Dust and stone rained from above, and the beast staggered, dazed, its armored scales chipped and broken where it had struck. The nobles gasped in shock. The princess cried out in hope, and the human, battered and breathless, tightened his fists and prepared to finish what he had begun, shattering pride. The arena was thick with dust and smoke, every breath heavy with the taste of iron and ash. The beast staggered where it had slammed itself into the wall, its scales cracked, its roar weakened, yet its fury burned brighter than ever. The human stood in the center of the arena, his chest rising and falling like a drum of war, his skin marked with blood and bruises, but his spirit unbroken. He had endured what none of the nobles believed possible, and still he did not fall. From the stands above, the nobles leaned forward, their mocking laughter now replaced with restless unease. They had expected screams, quick death, and humiliation, but instead they saw a man who refused to break. Each minute he stood was a wound upon their pride. Each breath he drew was a challenge to their certainty. Their voices trembled as they hissed curses, trying to bury their fear and hatred. But beneath their scorn there was something else rising, respect they could not admit. The princess gripped the railing so tightly her fingers turned pale. Her eyes shone with tears, but also with fire. Every strike he survived, every roar he defied, was proof of the truth she had shouted in the throne hall. Her voice carried across the noise, trembling but strong. "Do you see him now? Do you see what I saw? He is no coward, he is no trickster. He is a man who endures even when the stars fall against him." Her words rose into the air like a prayer, and for the first time, some of the nobles fell silent, unable to deny the truth. Unfolding before their eyes, the queen sat upon her throne high above, her golden eyes fixed on the arena, her expression carved from stone. Her crown glimmered with the cold fire of her people's pride, but her fingers tightened upon the arms of her seat, for she saw what others tried to deny. This human did not fight with strength alone. He fought with will, with cunning, with the fire of one who would rather die standing than bow broken. Her heart, hardened by centuries of rule, stirred with something she had not expected. Doubt. The beast roared once more, blood dripping from its scales as it lunged, fury driving it beyond reason. Its claws cut through the air like blades. Its tail lashed with deadly force. The human ducked, rolled, and turned its own momentum against it, driving the creature into the stone once more. The sound shook the arena, dust and rubble falling like rain. The nobles gasped. Some even cried out in disbelief, for what they witnessed was not luck, but skill, not weakness, but strength hidden beneath fragile flesh. The human staggered to his feet, his body shaking, his face pale, yet his eyes burned with fire. He raised his fists, blood dripping from his knuckles, and for the first time he roared back at the beast. The sound raw and human, yet filled with defiance so powerful it silenced even the nobles. The beast hesitated, its monstrous body trembling as though it, too, felt the strength of the man before it. The princess's tears streamed down her face as she cried out his name, her voice breaking, her hands gripping the railing as if she could tear it apart to reach him. In her eyes he was no longer just the soldier who had saved her. He was something more, a living proof that strength did not belong only to her people, that worth was not measured in bloodline or empire, but in the fire of the soul. The queen rose from her throne, her towering figure casting a shadow across. The nobles, her robes flowing like storm clouds. The chamber fell silent at her movement, all eyes turning toward her. Her gaze did not waver as she looked down upon the human. Still standing despite the odds, still unbroken despite the trial, her lips pressed together, her golden eyes burning, and when she spoke her voice was not thunder, but iron tempered by fire. Impossible, she whispered, though the word carried across the entire arena. Yet undeniable. Her voice grew louder, sharper, filled with both anger and reluctant awe. This human endures where even warriors of my bloodline have fallen. He defies the trial meant to break him. He bleeds, and still he rises. Again and again, without surrender. The nobles trembled at her words, for though she spoke with pride, they heard the weight of truth within them. Her daughter turned to her, her voice filled with desperate triumph. "Mother, you see him now. You cannot deny what he is. You cannot deny why I trust him." Her words rang out like a blade through silence, cutting away the last veil of scorn, for the truth now stood, bare in the eyes of all. The queen clenched her jaw, her pride warring with the reality before her. Centuries of belief, of empire, of unshakable supremacy, crumbled before the sight of one human who would not fall. Her heart burned with fury, but beneath it lay something far more dangerous. Admiration she could not suppress, and as the dust settled in the arena, the human stood tall though his body, screamed with pain, his fists still raised, his gaze unyielding. In that moment the queen's pride cracked like the shattered stone walls, for she saw not just a fragile outsider, but a warrior forged by fire, a man whose spirit was as unbreakable as her throne, and though her lips did not yet speak it, her silence alone admitted the truth. The pride of a queen had been shaken. The answer. The arena lay heavy with silence, the dust of battle still drifting in the torchlight like the ashes of a dying fire. The beast that had been unleashed upon the human now lay broken at the far wall, its armored body rising and falling. Weakly, as it surrendered to exhaustion, its roars had turned to whimpers, its claws buried deep in the cracked stone as though it sought to escape the shame of defeat. The human stood tall in the center, his body trembling, his skin torn and bloodied, but his spirit unbowed. He had not fallen. He had not yielded, and, though he could barely breathe, he remained on his feet with fists still clenched. From the stands above, the nobles stared in stunned disbelief. The voices that had once roared with scorn and laughter were now muted into whispers. Their certainty had shattered before their eyes. The fragile creature they had mocked as unworthy had endured what many of their own champions could not. Their hearts churned with unease, for they saw in him the reflection of something they had denied for generations: strength without title, courage without bloodline, a truth their pride had hidden from them. The princess pressed herself against the railing, her silver eyes brimming with tears, but her face alight with pride. Her voice carried across the chamber as she cried out, "Do you see now? Do you see why I trust him? You cannot deny the truth any longer. He is more than human. He is more than you believed. He is the proof that worth is not written in blood, but in the fire of the soul." Her words struck like lightning, piercing through the silence that suffocated the chamber, forcing every noble to hear what they had spent years ignoring. The queen rose slowly from her high throne, her towering form casting a shadow across her people. The golden fire of her eyes burned brighter than the torches. Her robes swirled like storm clouds as she descended step by step into the silence. The chamber trembled beneath her presence, every noble bowing their head though they dared not speak. Only the princess kept her gaze lifted, her hand clutching the railing as if her will alone could hold back the storm that was her mother. She stopped at the edge of the arena, the human below lifting his gaze to meet hers. Though his vision blurred from exhaustion, he did not lower his eyes. He stood as he always had, unyielding even in the face of her power. Their gazes clashed, the weight of her empire pressing against the unbreakable flame within him. And for a long moment the hall breathed in silence. Then the queen's voice rang out, low but sharp. "Human," she said, each syllable carrying the weight of judgment. "You have endured where even my warriors have failed. You have risen again and again, though your flesh was torn and your blood spilled. You stand still, defiant, and my people have no choice but to see. But I will not speak for them. I will not ask them why. I will ask you." She leaned forward, her voice like a blade cutting through the chamber. "Why does my daughter trust you? Why does she cling to your hand as if her life itself is bound to yours?" The question hung in the air like a hammer above stone. The nobles froze. The princess held her breath, and the human, blood dripping from his wounds, raised his head higher, his voice raw but steady, carrying across the silence, "Because when she was lost, I found her. When she was weak, I carried her. When fire rained upon us, I shielded her with my own body. I did not think of her as a princess. I did not think of what she could give me. I thought only that no life should be abandoned to die alone. I gave her my strength because it was what I had, and I would do it again, even now, even if it meant my death." The princess's tears fell freely as she pressed her hand against her heart, her voice breaking with emotion. "And that is why I trust him, Mother, because he gave me what no throne, no crown, no army has ever given me. He gave me a choice to live, not as a princess, but as someone worth saving." The chamber fell utterly silent, the weight of her words pressing upon the nobles, upon the queen, upon every stone of the palace. No one dared speak, no one dared laugh, for the truth had been laid bare, a truth even their pride could not erase. The queen's golden eyes burned as she stared into the human soul, her jaw tight, her pride still warring within her heart. Yet even she could not deny what stood before her. Her voice came as a whisper at first, but it cut deeper than any roar. "Perhaps," she said, her tone heavy with reluctant respect, "perhaps we were wrong." She lifted her head, her gaze sweeping across the court. "Perhaps strength is not only in the blood of our kind. Perhaps it can burn even in the hearts of those we call lesser." Gasps spread through the nobles, for never before had their queen spoken such words. Her admission was not surrender, but the crack of an ancient wall, a sign that even empires could bend before truth. The princess gasped softly, her hand flying to her lips, while the human lowered his fist slowly, his body trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. The queen's gaze returned to him, sharp as ever, but no longer filled with hatred. "You have answered me, human," she said firmly, her voice filling the arena. "You have shown not only why my daughter trusts you, but why even I cannot. Ignore you. Remember this day, for it will be remembered in the stars." And as her words echoed through the hall, the human stood beneath her gaze, bloodied but unbroken, the princess still watching him with unwavering devotion, the nobles shifting. In uneasy silence, and for the first time in the Empire's history, a single human had shaken the pride of an alien throne.
Thank you for joining Eternal Human Spirit, where humanity always rises again.